Greetings, good to see you again. So this is going to be a sort of part 2, I guess, on the previous video, where if you haven't seen it, I reviewed this guy, another scan tool from the friends of mine over at Launch, and they have redeemed themselves with a much more improved scan tool over that C-Reader I reviewed a little bit ago. And in that video, I was going to try to diagnose the rough idle problem on this car, and it actually got to be a little more involved than I expected. I thought it was just going to be a vacuum leak. Most certainly is not. So in this video, we are going to diagnose what is wrong with this car. This is a 2002 Ford Focus, with a Z-Tech engine. It has about 88,000 miles on it, and it is driven by the little old lady to the grocery store, that whole story. And this car actually has been here before. You may remember a previous video where we had a no start and it turned out to be a bad fuel pump. And the car was running great, but it definitely did not leave my garage running like this. It has a rather rough idle. And there are no codes. There's no check engine light, and also the tool failed to detect any misfires, although it is accurate. It is capable of detecting misfires. I know this from experience for using it in other cars. So let's go ahead and get this thing hooked up and see if we can figure out what's going on here. All right, you can see it starts right up, no problem. And I can tell you it does have a rough idle. It feels almost like an engine mount, but it is definitely not, because we will see that it's related with RPMs. And actually, on the pay channel, on my Schrodinger's Box Quantum Mechanics channel, I had a similar, it was actually a Duratec engine, though, I believe, that had a timing belt jumped, and it didn't have the smoothest idle either, but it was kind of like this. So I'll be amazed if I have 2 jump timing belts. That would be miraculous. But let's get on to our scan tool. We are going to use something new here, the CRP TouchPro from Launch. And let's catch up to what we found in the first video. All right, so we're going to go to Diagnostic, Ford, Auto Search, 2002, and it's this guy. And let's let these load up. While that's loading up, I'm going to goose the throttle a little bit, and it seems to respond real well, but boy, then it just, now it's really struggling after coming on the D-cell, and the engine is just not happy right now. So let's get over to our powertrain control. Oops, wrong one there. Powertrain, and okay, no turbocharger. I do have to say I really do like this tool. And let's look for fault codes. There were none. No DTCs. Let's go back. Let's go to the data stream. Let me get you a look at this engine while that's loading. But I don't know if that's showing up, but you can really see there's a lot of vibration with this engine. It's certainly noticeable when you're in the car. You feel it through the steering wheel. So let's go back over. And of course we want to do some fuel trim, so we are going to go over to, well, one of the first things I did was the misfires. And we're going to go ahead and review that real quick in case you didn't see the first video. So we're definitely going to want engine RPM. We're going to want engine misfire detection. We are going to want long-term fuel trim. Actually, we also checked fuel rail pressure. Again, like I said, this car had a fuel pump put in it 2 years ago in that video. Maybe the fuel pump's going bad. We validated that was not the case in the previous video. I think that's fuel rail pressure. There it is right there. Okay, we're going to do fuel rail pressure. And you know what? Let's just go right now, because some of you guys have seen that previous video and I don't want to regurgitate everything over again. So what we want to do is let's graph our fuel rail pressure and our long-term trim. Okay, so we want to go over to this graph here, and we can only graph 2 things at a time. And what I've got here is the rail pressure is on top, the long-term fuel trim on the bottom there. You know, in the camera it's probably not showing up. I will tell you the resolution is plenty clear. We've got a 14% LTFT running right now at idle. We're going to look for improvement on that. Okay, and while we can see it's not proportionate with the RPM, but that is not indicative of vacuum leak there. Let's try it again. We can also see that our rail pressure is consistent, so we know this isn't going to be fuel delivery problem from the fuel pump, so my repair still held up there. But this is not a vacuum leak. Let's try that one more time. Actually, what I'm going to do is it's going to be a lot more accurate if we curve this against the engine load. So we can only graph two things at a time with this. Again, it's only a $500 tool, so I'm okay with that. But let's get our engine speed and our long-term fuel trim. And let's combine those. Okay, let's try that one more time. Okay, so we can see now, this is the importance with the graphing, by the way, that this is not a vacuum leak. This is confirmed. Wow, the engine's about to die, actually. We want to move on to some other things. We did not see the misfire at all, and that is hard to believe at this point. So what I want to do is put the misfire detection on. So let's go back. Let's clear off. Let's go to engine misfire. We can see we have no misfires, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a spark plug and verify that we do get the misfire counter working here. So what I'm going to do is just pull this plug here. Now, one of the things I noticed that I do not like is when I pulled the plug, there is no change whatsoever in the engine performance at all. And let's look over here, and we can see that it is detecting the misfire. I'm going to go ahead and plug that back in. Let's take a listen when we do that. Plugged back in, no change whatsoever in the engine performance. We see our misfire is now gone. So let's do that with, what that's telling me is we've got a dead cylinder, and it's not from spark, actually, or fuel, because we do have at least some combustion going on in there. That is going to be right there. I'm going to go in the direction of compression problem just on that. Although the engine just started right up, and also no misfires being calculated despite having what is obviously a dead or at least nearly dead cylinder. So let's try a couple other ones. I'm just going to go over to number 3. That was actually number 1, by the way. All right, a dramatic change with the engine now. So that cylinder is contributing. We see that we are getting the misfire detected. Huge change. You can really hear the engine respond dramatically with that. So that cylinder is good. There is definitely good compression there. So right now, we may have already, with a little bit of help from our tool, admittedly, found a direction. So let's go in the direction of compression issue. I'd like to continue this cylinder drop test on the other 2 cylinders just to see. Okay, I'm going to go to number 2 now. There is definitely response from the engine on that. Not as dramatic as when I did number 3, though. But definitely some response there. All right, I'm going to show you number 1 one more time while we're here. All right, no change at all with the engine. Just a little bit when I put it back in there, but that cylinder has a problem. So let's do this. Let's try our cranking compression test and see if we can get kind of an ear on this. All right, let's listen real quick to the compression. Oh yeah. Sounds like 2 cylinders, actually, doesn't it? All right, which direction do you want to go here on this to validate our compression problem? So there's all kinds of things we can do. One of them is just that crank test right there. I mean, I'm good with calling the owner and telling her that she's got some kind of cylinder head issue. I don't think it's a blown head gasket, though, because I know she has driven the car quite a bit. She was on some road trip, never had any overheating, at least that she said. Coolant's full. So I don't believe this is blown head gasket, but we definitely have a compression leakage here, and it's going to be a serious problem. We could bring out the scope and do a relative compression test. Typically, what I actually would do if I was not filming this, I would just go right to a leak down test. That's exactly what I would do. And I think just for the sake of the video, let's do this. Let's go ahead and do a quick relative compression test so that we can identify and verify that certainly cylinder number 1 is dead. And then let's go from there to a compression test and then a leak down test to validate where the leakage is. So we'll do all three. Okay, let's get this guy set up here. So this will be Vantage Pro from Snap-on. You do not need this to make this diagnosis. I'm just doing this because I know some people really like watching the kind of high-tech stuff here. So we need a lab scope. Let's do 40 amps. Let's see here. Let's do, that looks good to me. And what's our time scale here? 1 second should work. So actually, I wonder if I had peak detect on there. Yes. Okay, so I believe that this should be good to go. Okay, let's crank this thing over and look at the relative compression pattern. Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, so I didn't put a mark on this because I figured it'd be pretty easy to tell, but I'm guessing that that's going to be cylinder number 1 because we've got the lowest compression there. And firing order on this thing, I need to look it up. Okay, firing order 1342, so that'd be 1 right here, I'm sure. 3, we need to move over a little bit. 1, 3, 4, 2, 1. So it looks like cylinder 4 is pretty strong, but we definitely have big compression on number 1, and the others aren't quite so hot either. Certainly 1 and 2 for sure. So that gives us direction. We already confirmed number 1, but we also want to look at number 2, I believe, with an actual compression test. Let's get some numbers put to this. Okay, and we're going to just skip the compression test because, quite honestly, it's stupid. There's nothing it's going to tell us we don't already know, and what we're really interested in is where this leak is. Not that that even matters, but we're on number 1 here. I'm at top dead center compression. We can see we've got a little bit past 80% leak down on this cylinder. I'm going to put the microphone up to it. It's leaking past the exhaust valve. You can hear it very clearly. It's the exhaust valve that's not sealing, so all the compression being lost through the exhaust pretty much. At this point, there's really no reason to test the other cylinders. We've got our confirmation. If one of them's bad, it might as well be all of them bad. So unfortunately for this lady, the vehicle is going to need at the very minimum a valve job here. So I will let her know her misfortune. This is really too bad because this vehicle actually only has about 88,000 miles on it. And more unfortunately for this lady, I actually no longer do major engine repair. I just don't have the time, but at least I saved her from some hack that's going to put plugs, wires, oxygen sensors, new timing belt, whatever in this thing. And at least she doesn't have to go through the expense of a whole bunch of repairs until we finally figure out what's wrong. So at least I feel good about that, but I will let her know the bad news and we'll roll out this video. All right, well, that is just too bad for this lady. I hate breaking that kind of news. I really like the ones where they think it's something serious and then we do our diagnosis and show it's extremely minor, even a free repair. This one turned out to be the opposite, didn't it? But well, at least we got to keep our hands relatively clean with the help of our new launch CRP TouchPro scan tool, which did a fantastic job helping to quickly narrow down the diagnosis, and with the help of a couple other tools. We know where we stand now. So thanks for watching. Hope you found this helpful. We'll see you next time.